Chapter 13. Automate. Do it once and never again. When our children were toddlers, we lived next door to a family quite similar to our own. They had two young children, just like us. We traveled in the same social circles and saw each other every other weekend. Even the floor plan of their house was literally the mirror image of ours. One day the husband told me about his recent knee surgery. All had appeared to go well during the procedure, but his recovery was not progressing as expected. Instead of subsiding, the pain had increased as the weeks went by. Eventually they got to the bottom of the matter. The surgical team had inadvertently left a small surgical instrument inside his knee. One would never expect this kind of mistake from a highly trained medical professionals. And the team that performed the surgery was indeed highly trained. They had degrees from the top medical schools. They had many years of experience. Still, in the midst of this complex operation, they made a shockingly careless, utterly avoidable mistake. The explanation for this is simple. They had relied on their memory. As a result, they forgot an essential step in the process. It's tempting to say, if only the medical staff had been thinking. But I see it as, if only the medical staff had not needed to think. Alfred North Whitehead, the British mathematician turned American philosopher, once said, civilization advances by extending the number of important operations we can perform without thinking about them. Another way of saying, as many essential steps and activities as possible should be automated. Is there a cheat sheet for this? In 1935, rival aircraft companies Boeing, Martin, and Douglas were competing for a lucrative contract to build new long-range bombers. Boeing was expected to win. Its more powerful Model 299 had 4 engines instead of 2. It could carry 5 times the specified number of bombs and had a range twice as long as its predecessors. That all changed after its fateful test run. Carrying 5 crew members, the Model 299 rose gracefully off the runway before stalling at 300 feet, tipping sharply, and crashing to the ground. 2 of the crew members were killed, including the test pilot Major Ployer P. Hill. An investigation found that Major Hill, an Army Air Corps pilot with over 17 years of experience, had forgotten to release the rudder and elevator controls, a fatal error. More instructive, however, was a finding that Hill had been preoccupied by a myriad of other new complex procedures at the exact time he should have been executing these essential tasks. The Army concluded that the Model 299, the most technologically sophisticated aircraft of its time, was too complicated for one person to fly and awarded the contract to Douglas. But a group of test pilots still believed that the Boeing plane was superior and would give the country a distinct military advantage. They simply needed a tool that would allow a single pilot to manage the advanced aeronautical technology. As the surgeon and best-selling author Dr. Atul Gawande explains in his book, The Checklist Manifesto, Major Hill's tragic oversight resulted from the very same human limitation that leads to avoidable surgical errors. The vast amount of knowledge humankind has now acquired in so many disciplines has fueled extraordinary scientific, technological, and humanistic progress. But as Gawande argues, this progress has a downside. The staggering volume and complexity of know-how has exceeded experts' ability to manage it. And this is exactly why tragic accidents happen. Humans have a tremendous capacity for the storage of memories. Paul Reber, professor of psychology at Northwestern University, estimates that if the brain were a digital video recorder, it would have enough memory to hold 3 million hours of TV shows. But the RAM for information we can call upon demand, essentially our working memory, is far limited. This, at least, partially explains why highly intelligent people may still forget their keys, or why doctors with deep expertise still forget to remove an instrument from inside the knee of a patient. The limits of working memory breed avoidable errors. Extreme complexity only increases the cognitive load, making us that much more prone to errors. So what we need is not more knowledge, but new skills and strategies that allow us to apply that knowledge without taxing our working memory. Or as Gowande put it, we need a strategy that builds on experience and takes advantage of the knowledge people have, but somehow also makes up for our inevitable human tendencies. And there is such a strategy. Though it will seem almost ridiculous in its simplicity, maybe even crazy to those of us who have spent years carefully developing our more advanced skills and technologies. What we need, Gowande argues, is a modest but marvelous tool, the checklist. Once the Boeing test pilots implemented checklists and flew over and over without incident, Gowande writes, the Army Air Corps ordered thousands of planes. Renamed the B-17, the Model 299 dropped more bombs than any other U.S. aircraft in World War II and helped turn the tide for the Allies. The checklist helped the pilots remember each and every essential step, using as few mental resources as possible. The checklist isn't just useful for highly specialized tasks like flying an airplane. As the world gets more complex, we all need tools to help us remember what's important. The beauty of the checklist is that the thinking has been done ahead of time. It's been taken out of the equation, or rather, it has been baked into the equation. So instead of getting these essential things right occasionally, we get them right every time. A cheat sheet is one of the most effective, albeit low-tech, tools we have at our disposal to automate almost anything that really matters. The checklist is one type. Here are a few others. An employee uses daily planning software to make it easy to prioritize their day. A manager creates an agenda for their weekly meeting to ensure they cover the most important topics. An entrepreneur brings a slide deck to each pitch meeting to make it easy to remember the most salient points to cover. A teacher gives his students a list of writing tips to make it easy to write a great essay. A parent creates a chore calendar that makes it easier for the kids to remember who is responsible for what each day. Of course, this is just a partial list. The idea of a cheat sheet is simply to get things out of your brain so you can do them automatically without having to rely on memory. Residual results for 100 years. Have you ever been frustrated by the process of deciding where to go for an extended family holiday? Too many opinions, too many schedules, too many options. It can add up to months of going back and forth. Once you figure it out, you have the whole process to look forward to next year. Stephen and Irene Richards had a different idea. They wanted to make it easy for their children to get together regularly. So they decided to automate the process of choosing a destination and planning a new trip every year. They invested in a small lodge in Montana. Every summer, everyone was invited to go for as much or as little time as they wanted. This grew into a ritual people looked forward to. It became self-perpetuating. Every year their children came. Eventually their children got married and had children of their own. And those children started coming too. Their children, grandchildren, and grandchildren eventually built new lodges in the area, and so it has continued to expand. Now, a full 5 generations later, the family still gets together to play, swim, and make memories each and every year. On a given summer day, 30 to 40 family members will be out playing on the beach by the lake. On some days, the party swells to more than 100 people. Making decisions is mentally draining. Making decisions that will satisfy dozens of other people, each with different preferences, constraints, and priorities, is both mentally draining and close to impossible. That single decision made so many years ago eliminated this burden for several generations of Richardses and counting. Nobody has to do the work of coordinating everyone's schedules and choosing a destination, booking hotels, and planning activities in order for the whole family to spend time together. It is automatic and, compared to some family vacation planning I have seen, effortless. High tech equals low effort. Admittedly, I was a bit careless when I started driving. A then 18-year-old Joshua Browder sheepishly says when asked about the 10 traffic tickets he racked up in his first year of driving. But in Browder's view, most of his infractions either didn't merit a ticket or were the result of errors by the infamous traffic wardens, the UK's parking enforcement officers. So Browder decided to appeal the tickets. It turned out the courts agreed with him and he began winning his appeals. It didn't take long before he was helping almost everyone he knew to contest unfair tickets. The appeal process was relatively formulaic. A simple boilerplate letter was often enough to avoid an unwarranted fine. But while navigating the bureaucracy may have been simple for him, he noticed that for the elderly, disabled, and otherwise vulnerable people in his community, it was anything but. This gave him an idea for how he could do some good. It took Browder, who was then still a student at Stanford, just 2 weeks to build the Do Not Pay, a website and later an app dubbed the world's first robot lawyer that automated the process of appeals for those in need. Building on the success of the concept, Browder soon added a service that automatically scans users' email inbox for travel reservations, then helps them capitalize on price drops on flight and hotel reservations. Anyone can simply click the Solve This Problem for Me button and the automated process will take over. The app now saves users time and money by scheduling appointments with a DMV, getting them refunds from Grubhub, and unsubscribing them from spam, and even automatically adding them as a plaintiff to an existing legal claims against the spammer. Automation is anything that performs a function with minimal human assistance or effort, and it's happening everywhere. Some of it is so normal we don't really think of it as automation. The washing machine, dishwasher, refrigerator. It's only when these things malfunction or break that we stop to think about how much time and effort they save us on a daily basis. Other forms of automation haven't been around as long, but are still familiar enough that we don't notice them anymore. Automatic bill pay, the programmable thermostat, your virtual assistant reminding you what's on your shopping list, and so on. These tools are getting smarter all the time. Your virtual assistant can use AI algorithms to analyze your past buying patterns to tell you when you might be running out of shampoo or toothpaste. Your thermostat can learn how warm or how cool you like to keep your home throughout the day and adjust itself accordingly. Already, so many mental tasks can be offloaded onto technology, and this trend is only accelerating. After all, the technology for self-driving cars is effectively here now. In 2012, leaders at Expedia discovered that for every 100 people who booked a reservation on their site, 58 people needed additional assistance and called their customer service line. The number one reason customers called was that they needed their itinerary resent to them. That added up to 20 million calls a year, approximately the equivalent of every person in Australia calling the company every year. The CEO at the time said that if each call cost $5, which he felt was a low estimate, then this added up to at least $100 million problem. So instead of continuing to respond to each of these requests one by one, Expedia made it possible for customers to access their itinerary right on the website and through an automated message system. It required a modest investment of time and effort up front, but the result of that one action was a 43% reduction in calls each day from then on. The time and cost savings from this single change were so significant that today the company is rolling out a whole host of self-service features that use artificial intelligence and machine learning to meet customers' varied and ever-evolving needs. Ryan O'Neill, who heads Expedia's customer service operations, expects that eventually 90 to 95% of all customer service function will be fully automated. How can we use technology to automate the things that really matter in our own everyday lives? Take, for example, subscriptions that renew automatically. We always think we'll remember to discontinue them, but we never do. And we end up being charged for months or even years without knowing it. I once realized I was paying 10 times the correct amount to an online service I'd signed up for. Instead of the $10 a month I thought I was being charged, I had in fact been charged $100 for several months before I noticed. Consider taking the high-tech, low-effort path for the essential and the low-tech, high-effort path for the non-essential.